Let's do it. So thank you so much, Asia, for joining us on Mac TV. I got to tell you, I am so excited that you decided just to take some time from your personal life and your busy life to come join us. Because I just know that, you have such a wealth of wisdom, and so much of what you are going to be talking about today is going to have a drastic effect and impact on my audience. So thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you. I'm honored.
Yes, we're gonna have fun.
We will. We always have fun in our
Yeah,
conversations.
too much fun, actually. Anyways, guys, so as I'm sure you guys have already noticed from the title of this video, we're going to be talking about emotional intelligence today. And oh my goodness, does Asia have a wealth of knowledge on this subject? And so I'm super excited to dive in. But before we get into the emotional intelligence, the EQ stuff, why don't you tell my audience a little bit about you and what you do, and just a little bit about your journey, if you could.
Absolutely. Thank you. So here's a little bit about me. I am a women's empowerment coach, and I do work with people, women leaders who want to develop themselves and their leadership capabilities because as women, we need to stand up and we need to show up that we're not a minority. We are capable to be leaders. We are capable to get ourselves out there. And sometimes what we need is a little confidence and a little push. And so my whole background, what I do is to help women with gaining their leadership capabilities so that they can continue to go up this ladder of success that they have set for themselves. I'm also a human resources business partner, so I have a background in human resources and training and development. So I do those things as well. And in the meantime, I'm also a doctoral student at Pepperdine in my last year of doctoral studies for now, because I am going to pursue a second doctorate after this. We'll talk about that later.
Later.
That's a whole other story of why. But I am working actually on a dissertation that talks about imposter syndrome and the feeling of inadequacy, self-efficacy, self-esteem. There's a lot of really great stuff going on in this dissertation in my research study, which really goes directly towards my women empowerment coaching, which I love it. So that's what I've been doing. That's pretty much my journey. But in the last 10 years, it took me a lot of time to find myself and just kind of figure out where I needed to be at, where I wanted to go. And after several attempts figuring that out, I'm glad to be where I'm at today, and it takes time to build, but
It
I'm
does.
so happy to be on this journey.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so glad you do what you do because, women's empowerment, specifically in leadership, is really important. I mean, it transcends, it affects, has a domino effect, is what I'm trying to say. And so, doing what you do is incredibly important. So I'm glad
Yeah.
that you're building the bricks one by one because it helps all of us.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So yeah, let's dive into this, Asia. So we're going to talk about, like we said, emotional intelligence. So why don't we start off by you kind of helping my audience? Because I think a lot of people know what it is, but they don't really know. Like they can't really describe it. So why don't you, give us kind of an overview of what emotional intelligence really is?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, emotional intelligence is really, the ability for you to recognize your own emotions and feelings and how you react in specific situations. And it also helps you to kind of learn and understand more about other people's emotional intelligence, or as it is called, emotional intelligence quotient, or EQ for short. So it's really understanding your own emotions and understanding the emotions of others and being able to relate with that, being able to use them appropriately for your behavior, to be able to adjust within different environments, different situations, right? So, for example, a leader who has emotional intelligence will know how to react in a situation where maybe something is very urgent. So, for example, if you have a leader who is going through um, an issue with an employee. So this employee is coming in, maybe they're coming in late every day. Maybe they come in and they're, you know, not necessarily creating the best environment for the company, right? So a leader who has emotional intelligence will bring this person in and speak to them from a level of, let me get to know and understand you.
Right.
What's going on? What's causing you to be so late every day? And that person feeling that, oh, this person's going to understand me and where I'm coming from, and could say, look, I've been dealing with a lot of, issues with my family. I'm not able to sleep early enough. I don't wake up early because I, am losing sleep. I have a child who's sick or something like that. And a leader who's emotionally intelligent would be able to reflect on that. And rather than saying, well, you keep coming in late, and if you do this one more time, we're going to fire you, they would say, you know what? I see where you're coming from. Let me tell you a story about where I've been at and how, things affected me, and maybe I can help guide you to understand how maybe you can help yourself, and maybe what you can do to start waking up earlier so you can be here on time, because you not being here on time is hurting the company, because then we fall behind projects when we're relying on you and you're not there to help us out, right? But you're saying it in a way where that person feels your empathy
Right.
and your emotions. And they're not necessarily feeling your anger and your, like, you know toxicity. I mean, that would probably be the best way to say it, because someone who's yelling at you and telling you you're not doing something, you're not good enough at doing something, because they're not looking at their situation, they're just angry and they're just blurting out what they're saying. It really affects the morale of your company or employees. I mean, even in general, in real life, like if you're with your family and you're not using emotional intelligence or practicing it with your family members, that's going to seep into other aspects of your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was interesting. I was reading this article in HBR, maybe it was a couple years ago, so I can't even remember. I think it was HBR, but it was interviewing a bunch of successful CEOs, and they attributed their success to having a high level of EQ.
Mm.
And I remember thinking, yeah, that makes perfect sense because you really do need that as a leader of any team, whether you have a small team or if you're a CEO of like a multi-million dollar company or whatever, right? Having emotional intelligence, being that, self-aware and self-management is extremely important. So why would you say then, Asia, it's so important for people to have this and work on this, particularly in the workplace?
Well, it's important because it's a part of building a relationship. And if you don't know how to assess your own emotions and what you're feeling at the moment and that of another person, you can create problems in the company, right? So, for example, Daniel Goleman, he was one of the founders, right? Daniel Goleman's written books on emotional intelligence. So have many other people have also done that too. And so there's a specific model of emotional intelligence or EQ, and able to really see how you understand if you fit in that model or not. One of the first things is self awareness, which is the ability to know your emotions, to understand what your strengths and your weaknesses are, to understand what drives you, what gives you passion. So you have that self awareness. You're also self aware of your feelings in the moment. You're not being blindsided, like, how you feel. If you're feeling angry, you have the self awareness that you feel angry, right? But then you also have self regulation, which is the controlling of that emotion, right? Because you don't want to, like, blurt out something and then that's an inappropriate way to talk to somebody in the workplace, especially for someone who's a manager, leader. It's not going to be good for them to look at the situation and just be brash about it and say, oh well, you know we're going to do it my way or the highway, or make the other person feel bad if they're not doing something. There's a way of sitting that person down and talking to them. There's a way of talking to other people and controlling your own. Like, you might be angry at an employee who really just screwed up your entire account, but rather than yelling at this person and firing them, you have no idea what they're going through, and maybe they had a really, really horrible month. Maybe someone in their family was sick, maybe they were dealing with a sickness, especially right now with COVID and the pandemic. You have employees who are probably coming in, after getting COVID, and they're still dealing with the after effects of it. And so when you're not emotionally aware, when you're not able to self-regulate yourself and control those feelings and emotions that you're feeling at the moment, and you just say to that person, well, you didn't do the job I asked you to do, and therefore I'm going to go ahead and terminate your employment effective today immediately. Please pack your stuff and leave, without understanding what that person's going through, then other people that are watching this are going to say, oh, wow, like he screwed up, but he got fired. So even if I make a little mistake, they're going to be on pins and needles
Yeah.
because that leader didn't know how to deal with their emotions. A leader that would have like the self-awareness of where they're at and the self-regulation of their, feelings, self-regulating, controlling, you know, the impulses of, the disruptive emotions that can cause issues, can actually sit that employee down and say, you know, this didn't work out today. We lost an account, or something happened, and obviously the numbers were messed up and this didn't work out for us today. I want to talk and see what we can do to resolve the situation, because there are things that I've seen that you do that are great for the company, but this is not an acceptable thing, so we got to talk about this. But now you're saying we got to talk about it. Now you're working on empathy, which is considering the other people's feelings, especially when you're making a decision. So that's one of the five models, one of the five aspects of this model that Daniel Goleman introduced. So self-awareness, self-regulation, social skills, right? Because you're learning how to create your relationship so you can get along, right? So that's why we have these happy hours at work, or we do these things to help our employees get along and create these relationships. And then, like I said, empathy. And then finally, motivation. What's motivating this? What's motivating you? What's motivating the other person? So if you're going to sit down with this employee who messed up your account, and you get to talk to them and find out where they've been at emotionally, you understand what they're dealing with, you might not be so quick to want to, terminate them or fire them. You might be like, you know what, let's see what we can do. Maybe we'll have someone else jump on this account with you, or maybe we'll, do this, or we'll figure out a different way. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's just really all about that. If you know how to measure your emotions, you are aware of how you feeling, but you know how to take that and rein it in and say, okay, I'm going to control how I feel at the moment, and I'm going to take this anger and make it into something productive. You are emotionally intelligent. You have a good high level of EQ. And I will tell you that those people that have a very good high EQ level, they have better mental health. They perform better at their job. They're better leaders, and their relationships are not affected as someone who doesn't have any of that. If you don't have that emotional intelligence, if you don't work it, if you don't practice and exercise that, you're going to find you're not going to be in a good emotional state, and your leadership is going to lack because you don't have the ability to empathize and to discern emotions and feelings, and make them into a productive means of getting to know that person, or making sure that things don't fall apart in the company.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I know you touched on it a little bit, but I want to just double click on it so that people that are listening could really like self evaluate. But for anyone like watching us, how do they know whether or not they have a high EQ or a low EQ? What's the self assessment that they should go through?
That's a really good question. So I've actually kind of like created a little bit of my own self-assessment. If you, because
Do it
if you
then.
can, right? Yeah. Like one of the ways that I would assess my emotional intelligence is looking at those five, areas, right? The self-awareness, self-regulation, um, social awareness, the empathy, and the ability to make your relationships happen, the motivation. If you, out of those five, look at, one of my assessments is to look carefully at how you're feeling, right? So you want to start building your self assessment, is the way I say it, right? So what I would suggest is someone looking at their emotions. So are you a really good person in EQ? Like, do you have a good high EQ, or do you have a low EQ? So look at where, look at some examples in the last few weeks of what you've been doing. Were you angry at somebody at work? How did you react? So you ask that question. How did you react to that situation? And if you look at the last three reactions you had, and each of your reactions were, full of anger, and you were yelling at somebody, or you would feel like you're mentally a mess, your EQ is not high. You have a low EQ. If you look back and think about the question, how did I empathize with this person? Then you also will create that awareness of where your empathy level is at. If you have a hard time empathizing with somebody's feelings, and they're coming to you and they're telling you what they're going through, and you're like, okay, and you're dismissive about it, you right there, that's a low EI. That's a low EQ. EI is also emotional intelligence. So that's a very low EQ score already. There are assessments that you can find online to measure your EQ. So there's an emotional intelligence test that was done by Swinburne University. There's also another model. It's called TEIQ. It kind of like helps you to, like, it asks you lots of questions to measure your ability of emotional intelligence. It measures what your traits are that you would be able to use for emotional intelligence. Um, and I will look in that, but definitely this is something that Daniel Goleman uses to measure your EQ by, you taking a test and answering these few questions to, find out where you're at, basically, with your lower high level of EQ. But I just feel like if you're really good with at least asking these questions of, how did I react, did I empathize, you know am I building relationships with these people, and your answers are coming out to be no, 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 or I reacted negatively to the situation, or I didn't empathize with this person, or I felt, when they were telling me this, I just felt like they were whining and complaining. You right there know at that moment where your EQ will stand, just by you assessing yourself.
Right. I think that's great. Those couple questions, because those tests are really good, don't get me wrong, but just those couple questions can really quickly help you see or gauge where you're at. And then you can see, okay, well, I need to maybe work. And it is possible for you to be like really empathetic, but not necessarily have good self management. You know what I mean? So you could be listening to your employee like, because I've just dealt with people like this before where they are extremely good at empathizing with their employees, but when someone lets them down, they're not the best at managing their emotions, right? So,
Yeah.
I think the questions that you gave are really, really good because it's like a nice overall like assessment of how good or how high or low your EQ is. But if you
Yeah.
want to dive deeper into each one, then like Asia mentioned, definitely look into the other assessments. I will link some in the description box below, and of course I'm going to do a shameless plug here, but in the new manager accelerator program, we have a full lesson dedicated to assessing your emotional intelligence as well. So
Perfect.
what would you say? Yeah, I know, it's awesome. So what would you say is like one actionable or maybe two actionable steps that someone can take to improve their emotional intelligence?
That's a good question. So here's a couple of actionable steps that I've also personally taken to help me with, being able to have a higher EQ. One of the things that I've done is, as I've gained more self-awareness of where my emotions are coming from, one of the things that I do to develop this is to understand what the other person's going through and ask questions. I feel like asking questions is powerful. It gets you to understand and know um, what other people are thinking and what your thought process is and how aligned you are, right? For me, also building relationships is important. And I'm going to kind of talk like maybe a couple minutes here about boundaries, because this kind of ties in with EQ really well. When you are emotionally intelligent, you also know when and where to set boundaries with people. So you know how people are going to react to your specific boundary, and you know how to make it so that that reaction is not a harsh reaction from them or from you. And so one of the things that I've done is I've created different boundaries between myself and the people that I work with or people I know. So I know, for example, that I don't want anyone to be in my personal space when I'm busy working with something or I'm busy on a project, right? And so one of the boundaries I've done is like, telling somebody, hey, listen, during these times I'm not available. I know you might need me. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to, send me an email or send me a text, depending on how we communicate with what you're, thinking about or what you're going through. When I'm done with what I'm doing, I will come and look at the email or my text, and then I will be able to respond accordingly. Because I don't want to be interrupted in the middle of my process because I'm in a flow. And when somebody comes in and says, I need you for something, it's like, oh, hold on, that could be because you know what? That would make me erupt in what the heck? I'm trying to do my work, right? Rather than, oh, okay, once, you know what I mean? So having that clear mind of letting me process what I'm doing, and then that person might have questions or might want me for something, unless it's a dire emergency, you know, they know to wait until I'm done, and then they can come in or send me the emails or send me a text with the questions that they have, or what they're needing from me, and I could be able to give to them more openly than if I'm in the middle of something and then they're coming in and saying something to me.
Right.
So that's just kind of like one example that I can give about like how I'm creating my emotional intelligence, just by being able to say and tell people what I need from them and what I'm expecting from them. Because if we are not open enough to do that, we can't tell other people what we need and want from them. We're keeping it inside of ourselves, and then we actually start to create these negative feelings towards others.
Passive aggressive behaviors is what I've noticed happens.
Yes, exactly. And then when you keep that all that smorgasbord, like if you just keep that inside of you, man, you don't want to be there when it erupts.
I know.
It's like a volcano, like, and there goes all your emotions and feelings, and everyone's looking at you like something. What happened to this
Yeah, like
girl?
they had no idea, right? Because they were not given breadcrumbs. They weren't, they didn't know.
They didn't know. They're like, what? So it's, but you have to be really aware. You have to practice your emotional intelligence just by being able to understand what's motivating you, what drives you, being able to be aware of where you're going, what your feelings are, what the feelings of others are, and just being able to say, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing. This is what I'm going to practice. And it takes time because trust me, I've gone through, there were times in my life where I was just like, you know, I would get angry about stuff or, whatever. But I had to learn, I had to learn how to deal with my emotions so that I knew how to let it out. And one of the best ways I found to let your emotions out is to journal. So you just
Yes.
grab a journal and just do like a brain dump and just like talk about what you're going through and what you're feeling. Um, Another thing I will definitely suggest in helping you with improving your emotional intelligence is to get a therapist. I know it sounds weird,
Nope.
but I got a therapist, kind of not because I was having, any kind of issues or anything like that. My thing is this, get a therapist, even if you're not going through any type of mental problems or emotions or feelings, because you know what? You need someone to talk to who doesn't, who has like this neutrality. So they can kind of tell you, oh, well, why is this making you feel that way? What are you doing to, protect your emotions or to protect yourself, right? And so I found it really helpful for me to have a therapist, or if you don't even have a therapist, if you have a really good friend that you trust, 100%, and even then, be cautious with who you trust. I'm going to say that. But if you have someone that you trust, that you can talk to about how you're feeling or what you're going through. So it could be your significant other, it could be a best friend, it could be a parent or a sibling that you're very close to, and you kind of just let them know what you're going through. It helps to relieve what you're feeling, and then they can give you their perspectives as well of, well, I understand you were upset at this employee today because they didn't follow through what they said they were going to do. However, what if you did this, or what if you could do that, right? So to help you to kind of think about different options, different opinions, different points of view, and then that actually regulates your emotions so you're not as angry as you probably were when that happened. And the other thing is too, like when you get angry or when you get upset about something, or when you're in a situation that's like an emergency situation, you need to learn to breathe. So just take the 3 seconds and just close your eyes and breathe, because that will relax you inside. And even in a moment of an emergency, you'll know what to do. So whatever your emotional response is going to be, you can set that aside for a moment, and you can just focus on what you need to complete in that moment to make sure that you're taking care of the situation.
Yeah, that is such good actionable advice. For me, I think because I used to be like that too, like ask my team. I was the type of person, particularly at the beginning, that went from 0 to 100 like real quick with certain things. And I felt like the key for me was like truly understanding myself. It's crazy how much we can go through life not really understanding ourselves really well. Um, but it took like leading people for me to really understand myself. I know that sounds like really silly, but that is what it took. And then I was able to truly understand what my triggers were, what things really got under my skin so that I could catch it in the moment rather than just letting it be. I got to a point where I was like, I had like sticky notes, actually, like literal sticky notes on my on my desk that was like, okay, when someone shows up late, this is the thing that pisses you off. When someone is not living the company values, this is what pisses you off. And so every time something happened, I would look at that and be like, I was like training myself in a way of like, okay, take a breath, like you said. But it first starts with knowing yourself, right? Like
Yeah, it
if
does.
you don't know what ticks you off, then none of the actionable steps that you're talking about is going to work if you
Mhm.
can't recognize it, right? First.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why the first step is to be able to have that self awareness, because when you create that self awareness for yourself, that really helps you to like focus in on what you need to take care of. Like
Yeah.
it's, if you're not aware, like the first step is always going to be awareness in everything. So when you're aware of, it's like when you're trying to fix your diet, right? And you're like, I want to lose this weight and I'm doing what I can. The first thing is to be aware of what you're eating. And if you realize in your self awareness that you're eating a lot of sugar, then you're going to want to cut the sugar out so you can be able to get into that weight loss mode. Yeah, and that's exactly what you're doing in everything. You make you make an assessment of yourself and you are aware of what's going on. And a lot of people do not do this for themselves. They
It's
don't create the self-awareness. Yeah, they don't create awareness. Rather, we're humans, we're creatures of habit, so they just keep on repeating the same stuff over and over again. And the next thing you know, it's like, oh man, like
nobody
now.
wants to be around you. Because
Exactly.
honestly, people that are not self-aware, they don't have relationships that last. It might be
Oh,
for a
yes.
short period of time before someone really knows you, but for the most part, like I hate to be that blunt, but that is actually the truth of the matter. I like
Yeah,
comparing self-awareness to like a gigantic mirror that's in front of you that just follows you and catches everything that you're doing, right? And if
yeah,
you're not a, if you don't have that mirror catching it, then other people are catching it and they don't like what they see. So you got to like make sure that you're catching it ahead of time and adjusting and adapting. That's not to say that you have to change completely who you are. I feel like sometimes, do you ever find that some people feel like, well, does that mean that I have to adapt to what everybody else wants me to be?
you're
No.
right, because again, then that comes right into boundary setting, because if
Boundaries.
you're feeling like you gotta adapt to everybody, then that's not what really emotional intelligence is. It's not really about adapting to everybody, it's understanding how to adapt to a specific situation
Thank you.
that helps you with understanding your surroundings, your environment, the people around you. It's not about, oh, I have to conform to what others want me to do, because that's not what emotional intelligence is.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with that. That's you not setting boundaries for yourself. That's pretty much what it is. If you're going to conform to what other people are telling you to do, then maybe what you need to do is create some awareness of what you want. Again, the motivation aspect of the model of EQ, right? That Daniel Goleman talks about. If you are motivated and you know what you're wanting to do, you know where you want to go, then you don't need to you know what you don't need to worry about what other people want you to do, because it's not about other people, it's about how you are in what you're doing and in your environment,
Right.
you know. And I actually wanted to say something too about emotional intelligence. So if you think about it, the higher your emotional intelligence, the better you have social relations between yourselves. And if you teach your children at a young age how to be social, like how to be emotionally intelligent, they have better social rapport with other people too. Children, they're able to understand, how to socially interact with others. They're able to better understand relationships, how to build relationships, how to maintain those relationships. So it's not just about building it, but it's also about maintaining it. So like now you've built it, but how do you keep it going, right? How do you maintain those relationships? That's a part of emotional intelligence. And also when you are highly emotional intelligent, you are actually looked at as very positive to others. So other people look at you and go, oh, like this person's amazing. She or he knows how to, deal with the emotions. They don't react in this negative way. And they're very positive, even in negative times, even when there's like a crisis going on in the company or, whatever in the world. I mean, we've had so many world crises going on, but if you know how to deliver your leadership values by being highly emotional intelligent and you continue to stay positive, people want to be around you, and you know that you have that ability to keep calm and to keep others calm when something happens. And also you have better dynamics at work because you understand how to negotiate, you understand how to work with people, even if it's somebody that you don't necessarily get along with or like, because it happens when
Happens.
you're at your workplace. Yeah, you're like, I don't like this person. I don't want to work next to this person in the cubicle. They're like smacking their chips all day. Actually, one of my so at the last job I was in, one of my former coworkers, him and I were kind of sharing a cubicle, and I was saying, right, like in my cubicle was right in front of like here, and he was in the next cubicle on the other side. So like there's a wall, and then the cubicle's on the other side. I don't know how to explain it. I think that's the best way
It
to
makes sense
explain.
though. It makes sense. You guys were like right up against each other, basically.
Exactly, but just that wall, right? Just kind of like covering us. So we're in the same room in the cubicle, and I'm like, I was munching on my chips, and I was already like, I'm aware, like, okay, these chips are loud, they're making noise, but I needed to have a snack. I was like hungry, and like, and when I'm working, I like to snack on stuff. I like to have like healthy chips or some fruit or something healthy to snack on. But I was snacking on some chips, and they tasted super good. So I'm eating and so the dude sitting on that other side of the cubicle, he hears me crunching, and I'm gonna tell you how bad the emotional intelligence was there for him. He quickly got up and he looks at me and he's like he starts munching loud on his chips, and he's like, man, these things make a lot of noise. And I was looking at him like,
Wow.
yeah, it was just weird. His reaction was just really weird. And he was just like, your chips are you're making too much noise with those chips that you're eating. Can you like stop? And I said, um, you can't tell somebody to stop making noise because these are chips. They naturally will make noise. Like I'm already trying to eat like very
Quiet.
slowly and yeah, quietly, but even when you eat quietly, right, you can even hear in your own ears when you're munching, and you can't do anything about it because that's what they're made. That's what chips are made for. you know, that's what crunchy things do. um, and so I was just, I looked at him and I was like, oh, okay, I mean, I could have slammed at him. I could have like reacted in a very negative way with him. I didn't. I just looked at him and I said, okay, I'll try, but sorry. I mean, I did give him a look because I was just kind of like, okay, but I was like, okay, so I mean, I related. I know how it is. Sometimes you can be sitting next to somebody and they're like smacking their gum all day, and you're like, oh my God, just stop. Stop chewing your gum.
You
It's
could empathize with him, but at
so
the same
I
time, it was still weird.
it was weird. So I was kind of like, okay. And so I didn't, but I didn't react or say anything. I just kind of looked at him like, okay, that's fine. And so, like, maybe about 10 minutes later, he actually apologized. He's like, I'm so sorry. He's like, I'm just really stressed out with stuff. And I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to snap at you. I didn't mean to like act that way. So he was very apologetic, and I just thought, well, you know what? I'm gonna redeem him on that one because he realized he made a mistake and he shouldn't have spoke that way and he shouldn't have said that, and he actually apologized for it. So I'm happy that he did that. But it took him a while. So if you were to measure the emotional intelligence of this person, maybe they didn't have that intelligence to know how to react. And what would have been a better way would have been saying to me, like coming over to my cubicle and saying, "Hey, Astia, I know you're eating those chips and they can be a little bit loud, but I was just wondering, can you munch just a little bit? Like, can you munch slower or like, maybe like, trying not to make too much noise when you're eating." I mean, obviously, I know it's not easy to do because they're naturally like, you're naturally going to make noise when you're eating, but um, because chips are crunchy. But if you can try to do that, I would appreciate it. So if he had said that to me, I probably would have still looked at him and been like, "Oh, okay." Like, you know, okay, I have to figure out how to make it so I don't make that much noise. But him seeing that would have said, "Okay, you know what? Let me just stop snacking, or maybe I can go to the kitchen and just, stop, and so, but like when he like kind of did that, reaction, I didn't want to really even munch on anything. I actually stopped because I felt like, oh wow, I didn't, disturb him. I didn't know my munching was that loud. I was really trying to be quiet, but it's not easy to do that. So, but you can see the emotional intelligence that plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting too, because just as you were telling that story, I was thinking to myself, it is even more important, like you already, double tapped on, that a leader has that, because you're going to have people on your team. I don't know about for you, but for me, it was like I had people on my team that had different, obviously, levels of EQ. And so I had to make sure mine was on point, because there was going to be situations where team members would lash out on me. And I have to recognize it's not about me. They're probably going through something at home. Or
Right.
right, because you are, as the leader of the team, you're the host of everything, right? And so that's why it's even more important that you're working on your EQ, because everybody else on that team is going to be, some are going to be super high on it, and then some are going to be a lot lower, and you have to like coach them up on it, obviously, but that's obviously a topic for another day. But it's extremely important that you are able to like modulate, be that like thermostat with everybody, because there are going to be people like that within your own team that you're just going to have to like not react to. Take it with a grain of salt.
Exactly, exactly. So it's just kind of like having to deal with that and knowing, how to deal with and sometimes people just they don't know how to deal and they just, act the way that they do. But
A lot of people have not been taught this stuff. A lot
no,
of
they
people.
so
um,
if you teach children at a young age how to, regulate their emotions, how to, knowing that they're open to discuss their emotions and and for them to acknowledge it, they grow up learning that. And if you're a good role model, at work, your employees are gonna see it. If you're a good role model and people are gonna like say, "Oh, my boss was so amazing because she or he, you know, knew like I was going through something, and rather than get mad at me for something that didn't go right, they actually sat me down and talked to me and had a one-on-one, and we were able to work things out. And now I have a better relationship too with my manager, my boss." And so, you might have somebody that's like, let's say, getting ready to retire, knowing that you had this amazingly good reputation at your company of being a very good manager and leader. um, People are going to say good things about you. That's because you knew how to react, and it's a skill. It's a
mhm.
skill that you have to continue working on. Even I continue working on it, because even now, like, I can find myself getting really upset about something, but I have to recognize that and I have to try to like tone it down, you know, and speak to somebody I feel safe with when it comes to my emotions and feelings.
Thank you
Which
so much for drilling down on the fact that it's a skill and not some, because I think, you know, some people believe sometimes that there's certain things that they just don't have and they don't think that they can acquire it. But EQ is a skill that you can absolutely keep working at, keep practicing, and you will get better at it
Yep,
day after day.
exactly. We're
Yeah,
not born with it. We're
yeah, I
not.
know.
It's like with leadership. People are like, "Oh, are you a born leader? Are you this?" It's like, you might be a born leader, but if you don't hone in on the skills that you need to know on being an effective leader, you're really not going to
You're
be
not.
able to do it. So you gotta practice. You gotta build up on it. It's like any skill that you're going to have in the workplace, you have to work on it. You have to build on it. If that means taking a class, If that means purchasing an online course from somebody that teaches exactly what you need to know, if that means reading books, following role models, that's how you're going to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. Would you be able, my dear, to let my audience know how they can connect with you and learn more about you and, all that fun stuff?
Absolutely. So everybody can connect with me. You can send me an email. I also will have my website up. So I know Mac, I'll give you the link to it. You can put it up on the channel, and you can go ahead and sign up on my website so you can be able to get the latest emails on any latest happenings I'm doing. I am working on 2 podcasts right now, so that's going to be coming out very soon. And so, with that said, having that having the fact that I'm going to have that, you'll be able to find me. So if you want to email me, you can email me at I'll have Mac put it in there because
Yeah, I'll put everything in the description.
because it's like you're gonna see it like, okay, let me spell out her whole name here and like that. But send me an email. You can find me on Instagram. I also have my Instagram, my LinkedIn. You can find me and contact me there. I'm
On
also
Clubhouse.
Yes, I'm on Clubhouse. So if you have a Clubhouse account, I do host my own rooms. I do host rooms with other co-hosts, which Mac, you and I need to host a Clubhouse room
We do.
soon.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So like, you can find me in any of this. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter. Oh, I'm not really utilizing Twitter that much. I should, but I just feel like Twitter is so it's just so
Yeah,
saturated. It's
that's
too
how I
saturated.
feel too.
Yeah, it's just too saturated. Instagram is better. I like Instagram. So, but yeah, get in touch with me through any of those mediums. I know Mac will put it down in
Mhm.
the below in the right above the comment section. So you'll be able to find that. Click on the link, sign up, and get on my email list. You will find out when I'm going to have my podcast coming out. So I have a show called the Empowered HR Leader Show, which is on my YouTube channel. And of course, again, that's going to be linked down there. I do have my podcast coming up called the Creative Woman Leader Podcast. I'm excited about it. I've already gotten a few interviews done and scheduled. So yeah. And then I also have another short mini podcast coming out called the Influential Women Leaders Podcast. And that one's just really focusing on the different women in the world who have been an influence, from our history all the way up to now, and also people within our community who say, hey, this person's really done an amazing job, and I want them to be talked about on this podcast. So that's my goal in doing that. And so I have these coming up, so feel free to check it out. And then of course, I'm updating my main website right now, so my main website isn't completely ready yet, but when it is, if you're on my list, you'll get an email, you'll know.
There you go. So the point of the matter is that you got to get on our list, okay?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. So, like I said, guys, I'll leave all the details for how you can get in touch with Aasiyah or Dr. Aasiyah in the description box below. Thank you so much, my dear, for coming on the show.
Of
Loved
course. Thank you
having
for
this
having me.
chat. It was really, really important. I know this will serve my audience really well. So, thank you
Oh,
so
yes. No, thank you for having me. I'm so glad I was here. Thank you everyone for listening in, and hopefully I get to catch you on any of social media, YouTube shows that you'll see me on.
much. Thanks, hon.
Thank you.